Welcome to the channel. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Today we're looking at the remaining two chronographs from the original four that I looked at in part one of the Mirka video. You guys know how much I like the designs on offer from Mirka, so I bought four pieces, two big eye chronographs in some great colors and two panda style chronos in opposing colors. So I decided to keep these two, which you can see out of the four. Now these for me are the perfect chronograph watches housing the Seagull ST1901 mechanical hand winding movement. Now regarding Mirka, I will mention again what I mentioned in the last three videos I did on them, now in case there are any new viewers. They seem to have a very bad rep for extremely poor customer service, not so much quality, they send out incorrect items, which is a major issue, and even when they do have the odd QC issue, good luck getting it resolved. Now my personal experience has been very different. I own four other Mirka watches besides these two and I've not experienced a single issue. There are also others who've had no reason to contact them post purchase, so if you do decide to buy any, please bear the above in mind. Now that I've got that out of the way, let's focus on these watches in hand and show you the details around them. Specs and dims will be on screen. The price for the models does vary depending on where you get them. So from Mirka, they are a reasonable £160 given the specifications, but from AliExpress they are just under double that amount at £250. I don't know why, but AliExpress does give you that bit of peace of mind. Now while the cases are exactly the same as the previous two we looked at, the big eye chronograph, the main difference here is the dial configuration. You have two even subdials on either side of the dial, dateless, giving you a symmetrical panda dial. Now I kept these two colorways in particular, so I have opposites. I can enjoy the white dial with the black subdials and a dive style bezel, and the black dial with the white subdials in a static bezel. It gives me two very distinct Pilot chronograph watches. Now the differences here on the dial are the use of applied hour markers, but not just any ordinary hour markers. They're my favorite kind, covered with micro detailing. You have coarse vertical brushing finished with a highly polished bevel edge. They do an awesome job of catching light and standing out on the dial. Now the hands follow suit, being chamfered on both sides, highly polished with a strip of coarse brushing with a special emphasis on the tips, similar to that of CW hands, and the coarse brushing giving them a very sharp dagger point edge. I love seeing this level of detail on hour markers and hands. You'll also notice the length and the proportion of the hands is spot on, hitting the two sets of timing scales present. Now that against a simple black dial or a white dial is very effective. The dial is still printed. It does have a bit of red on three pointless letters under the Mirka logo, which works well as it matches the red central chronograph hand. Another thing which the dial does effectively, it hides the busyness really well. The outer timing scale, the tachymeter, is a contrasting color to the dial, white on black or black on white, etc. And that puts it in the background, almost like a border, and I like how they've done that. Yet it is still very visible. It's got crisp printing, every single micro marker is present and visible, very precise printing, leaving this dial still symmetrical and aesthetically pleasing. Now the subdials are finished in a thin polished outline where the light does glide around them, keeping them distinguished on the dial. Legible subdials with polished visible subdial hands. Now the lume is actually pretty decent too. You have dots of lume under the hour markers, which is less visible, but the lume on the hands is fairly bright for 14 vintage lume and everything is visible. Now this is exactly why I love these watches. The amount of micro detailing, high quality dials, hands, and the overall general quality on offer. Now I say these are perfect chronographs mainly because of the size. Pilot watches in generally are quite large with disproportionate lugs, often extending beyond that 50mm lug to lug and with very straight cases, which makes them wear quite uncomfortably on my 6.5-inch wrist. Now Mirka's 38mm case with a proportionate 47.5mm lug to lug makes the Pilot watches sit so much better on a smaller wrist. As I stated earlier about the case, they're exactly the same as the big eye chronos, but there is a subtle difference which I believe I may have missed on the last video. Between the static bezel and the dive bezel variant, focusing in on the lugs, we see the dive bezel has a beveled polished edge along the lugs, which is a great feature. It adds a lot of definition to the lugs. Now the static bezeled case sadly does not have this, but it is still well defined with crisp edges to the transition from the soft brushing to the polishing on the side of the case. I mentioned in the previous video that I initially fell in love with the exaggerated tool watch aesthetic, especially around that bezel. The machining gives it a beefier look, strong lines, deep cutouts, and you get a premium spec with a sapphire bezel inset, but I don't like the rotation. It's very zealous, strong clicks, and it's quite rough when rotated quickly. I prefer a much smoother glide to my bezels, which they can do, as evident on the Ocean Masters, but it is something I guess I can learn to live with. Now these two are also absolute strap monsters. I opted to go for the straps on both rather than the BOR bracelet. It gives them a more sportier look. The Dive Pilot on a Seaston FKM rubber strap, which is my go-to strap to be honest for most of my watches, and a dark brown leather pilot style strap for the fixed bezel. It's a great combination in my opinion. It really helps the watches wear so much better on wrist, as the bracelet does add a few millimeters to the overall lug to lug. Now considering everything, it's worth the risk to purchase models because you do get to enjoy that vintage revamped tool look that Mirka provide. The watch has great specifications. It has a good mechanical movement, which is beautiful to look at, thanks to that exhibition caseback. And overall, you can wear this watch pretty much on all occasions, just not diving or swimming, of course. So that's it for me today. I really would like to hear your thoughts on these. Let me know below. And thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you on the next video.